Well, it didn't take long, did it, for Putin to listen to his buddy, his boy, Donald Trump. The head of the NATO military alliance warned the other day that Trump was putting the safety of U.S. troops at risk, after he said that he would allow Russia to be able, they should be able to do, quote, whatever the hell they want, end quote, to NATO members who don't meet their defense spending targets. And Trump, being the ignorant, filthy scum that he is, he couldn't find where NATO meets. He doesn't know what NATO stands for. NATO member states don't pay money into a fund, which is what this orange son of a bitch told his brain-dead rally attendees over the weekend. NATO requires each member country to spend a certain percentage of their GDP to make sure their own armed forces are well equipped and trained, so that if the Russian bear ever does break out of its cage, there's enough preparedness to respond. But Trump doesn't know that because he is an ignorant filth. Well, Putin has acted. Under his direction, the Russian police have put the Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas of Estonia, and Lithuania's culture minister, and members of the previous Latvian parliament on a wanted list. That's according now to a database at the Russian Interior Ministry. And the pig spokesman for Putin, Dmitry Peskov, said that the prime minister was wanted by the Russians now for, quote, desecration of historical memory, end quote. The Russian state agency TASS said that these Baltic country officials were accused of, quote, destroying monuments to Soviet soldiers, end quote. And according to Peskov, these are acts that are punishable by a 5-year prison term in the Russian penal system. Kallas, the prime minister, said in a post on X, quote, the Kremlin now hopes this move will help to silence me and others, but it won't. I will continue my strong support to Ukraine. I will continue to stand for increasing Europe's defense, end quote. She added, of course, that this directive from Putin was not a surprise, just like the filth and garbage that comes out of Donald Trump's filthy, rotten mouth is never a surprise. It just keeps getting worse and worse. After Russia invaded Ukraine, it's been almost 2 years now, the Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, demolished most of the Soviet-era monuments. These are not Soviet Union countries anymore, and they were only there because of the Russian military. These are separate countries, so they demolished these statues, not unlike the statues of Confederate scum in this country that have been destroyed. And included among those monuments destroyed in these countries were monuments that commemorated Russian soldiers killed in World War II. Russia can put up as many monuments as they want to about their soldiers killed in World War II, but I mean, you don't put them up in countries that are not yours, that you don't control anymore, do you? In response to that destruction, the head of something laughingly called the Russian Investigative Committee This man ordered a criminal investigation into the matter. And the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said, quote, "This is only the beginning. Crimes against the memory of the world's liberation from Nazism and fascism must be prosecuted," end quote. And the irony of that statement almost makes me want to throw up, because Vladimir Putin is one of the natural offspring of Adolf Hitler. Trump is another one. Netanyahu is another one. Now, as well as the Estonian Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, the Estonian State Secretary, the Lithuanian Culture Minister, and about 60 of the 100 members of the previous Latvian Parliament, which ended its term over a year and a half ago. All of these people were put on the list, according to the Russian Interior Ministry database. The Lithuanian Cultural Minister, Simonas Kairis, said, quote, "The arrest order means I acted actively and in a principled way," end quote. And the Baltic states were sucked into the Soviet Union in 1940 and then occupied by Nazi Germany before Moscow reasserted control over those three countries as part of the Soviet communist bloc until these companies regained their independence when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. And now all three of these countries are members of NATO, as is Poland. And what did I hear from Rachel Maddow's program last night about Poland? Poland is being slowly targeted by Russia. And that came out in the insane statements that Putin made during his interview with the little pissant who used to be at the Fox sewer. And Putin was describing the Polish leadership as having, back in 1939, as having deserved the Nazi invasion because the Poles refused to allow the Nazis to come in willingly, gratefully. And Russia has always tried to absorb Poland, that it's not really a country. The same thing that Putin has said about Ukraine. These are not countries. This is part of Russia. So it's already begun, thanks to this filthy son of a bitch in this country, Donald Trump. And it's going to get worse. Trump saying, "Oh, I would tell Russians to do whatever the hell they please. Somebody didn't pay up the money," as if paying up the money even had any basis in reason or logic. You don't pay up the money if you're part of NATO. You develop your own military to the point that it's ready to resist the Russian attack on a NATO country. One thing that Putin is fully aware of: Poland is now part of NATO. And of course, what Putin is hoping for is that his disciple, Donald Trump, the American Nazi, will become the president this November. And then when the Russian forces move into Poland, the United States will not be there to help the Polish people, even though we have a commitment through NATO. We are heading for some horrible, horrible situations if this orange Nazi gets power. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.